Good morning, everyone watching live on BAM YouTube. Let me know in the comments where you are tuning in from. The hot sheet covers what you need to know about the real estate industry in a 24-hour time period. And on today's hot sheet, I will cover the December CPI report, just came out an hour ago, the Fed's next meetings, new home cancellations, mortgage demand, and Inman power players, another list. Today is Thursday, January 12th, 2023, and the hot sheet starts now. Good morning. I hope this is a welcome back to the hot sheet. Let me know in the comments if you are returning here on day of the hot sheet, where we're going to go live every single Monday through Friday to give you that 24-hour window of everything you need to know in the housing market, whether you're a real estate agent, an attorney, a lender, somebody in insurance, or an appraiser, and you want to know everything as it relates to this industry, real estate, just like you would on an MLS hot sheet. This is the place to be. So consider subscribing, obviously, to this channel, but consider sharing today's live stream with somebody maybe in your office, on your team, or maybe one of your allies, be it a lender or who could benefit from this information. Hit the thumbs up button if you enjoy the hot sheet. Let's jump right in. The CPI report is now out. It just came out an hour ago, and this is in regards to December's report, right? So let's just take a look, see what happened and how this may impact mortgage rates. Obviously, that's what we're tracking closely in housing. We want to see what happens with the rate. We know when the rate goes down, we see another uptick in demand. Consumer prices fell as expected, 0.1% in December, and this was in line with all the expectations flowing yesterday. The consumer price index fell that 0.1% for the biggest drop since April 2020. Excluding food and energy, core CPI rose 0.3%, also in line with estimates. On an annual basis, headline CPI rose 6%, while core increased 5.7%. The biggest reason for the easing in inflation came from a sharp drop in gasoline prices. Obviously, we see a whole bunch of people talking about, food prices. Now they're on the rise, so that there's still a lot of issues. And obviously, this didn't solve every single issue, but the trend is positive. The trend is looking really good. Core inflation. This is from Nick Timiraos. He's from Wall Street Journal, one of the chief economists there. Core inflation ran at a 3.14% annualized rate in the October to December period, the lowest such reading in 15 months. Hit the thumbs up if you're pumped about this. This is good news for the industry. It was 4.55% on a 6-month annualized basis, the lowest reading since May 2021. So you can see clearly these charts. If you're on YouTube, if you're not listening on the pod after the fact here, if you're on YouTube, you can see that these charts are at a downward trend. By the way, if you do want to listen to this later on in the day, if you want to listen to the hot sheet, we're on Apple, we're on Spotify. Spotify gives you the video version so you can actually see all of these charts that we're sharing. Another tweet from Nick, December CPI, obviously we just mentioned, down the 1.1% from November, plus 6.5% on the year, which is, listen, we were just at over a plus 7% year over year. So everything is trending down. Core CPI, the 0.3% from November, and plus 5.7% on the year. Again, a lot of good news as it relates to the CPI. It remains to be seen. We're going to be watching closely today if there's an immediate impact with the 10-year. We're going to look at where the 10-year is at the end of this hot sheet. But is there an immediate impact on the 10-year and on the 30-year fixed rate mortgages? We shall see. Here's one interesting take this morning on Twitter. Lance, at News Lance Lambert with Fortune Magazine, he tweeted this out. He retweeted Nick Sa, who said housing, owned and rented, continues to be the largest contributor to inflation. It accounts for nearly 28.3% of inflation. Expect overall inflation to decline further, albeit slowly. Housing's share to stay the largest. You see that housing, in comparison to all of the other transportation services, gasoline, automobiles, Also electricity and all other items being on a decline there. Or no, I'm sorry, all other items cumulative is 3%, but housing and rented housing on their own category at 1.8% and 0.6% are much larger than transportation, gasoline, automobiles, and electricity. Okay. Now, I like that Lance retweeted, that quote tweeted this, because what he said was, yes, housing is the biggest contributor and it's lagged. Remember, all this housing data is like 3 months old data. So while housing is making up the largest chunk of inflation, we're basing this off of the beginning of Q4 in 2022, which is coming off of the heels of a Q3 in 2022, which was really high of inflation across the board. Housing had just started going into the recession, June 2022, July 2023, right? And so these lagging numbers in real estate are going to be substantially higher. But with everything else around housing coming down as it pertains to inflation, housing being a lagging number, and housing numbers over the next 2-3 months are going to continue to get better as it relates to inflation. This is real positive news for getting to a more normalized place as it relates to the real estate market. A lower mortgage interest rate to help affordability as it relates to home shoppers and home buyers. There's still a long way to go. We're going to see what the Fed says about this. And I'll share with you just basically what the Fed's schedule is, because their meeting hasn't happened yet for January. So when does the Fed meet? Should you have this on your calendar? Should you be paying attention to what they're saying? They're still talking. I talked about this yesterday in the hot sheet. They're still talking really tough about housing. They're really still surprisingly talking tough about the job market. Okay. When do they meet? How are they going to react to the CPI report? A couple days ago, Jerome Powell said, we're going to continue to stand firm, trying to get ahead of this report, ahead of the good news, get the good momentum here for the third month in a row. So the Fed is going to meet January 31st to February 1st. So they do these 2-day meetings. Okay. That's the next, I'm sorry, I apologize if you're watching there. That's the, oh, there we go. First time using the iPad. There you go. January 31st to the 1st, you can see here, March 21st to 22nd. Then they have meetings May, June, July, September, October, November meeting, and then December. Okay. These meetings are also associated with a summary of economic projections. 3 weeks after the meetings is when they will put out their full, the meeting minutes in its entirety. Okay. So that's a little lineup of when the Fed is going to meet. And if you'd like to mark that on your calendar so you can kind of watch closely, some of those Twitter accounts that I referenced there on the CPI data are just great Twitter accounts to follow if you really want to be up to the minute on that stuff and how it's going to pertain particularly to the housing market, or just continue to hit the thumbs up button here and get the hot sheet more to more people, because we're going to break down every single Monday through Friday for you. All right. Another report that Lance tweeted out here as it pertains to new home construction. New home cancellations are on the rise. This is a KB Home report. KB Home, one of the nation's largest, reports a 68% cancellation rate in Q4 of 2022. Listen, I know some people that actually canceled their new construction home in Q4 of 2022. There was a lot of concern, right? Because Q3 housing went into that recession that we've talked about. Q3 cancellations were 35%. So just a huge increase, Q3 and Q4, in new home cancellations on contracts. Everything during those COVID months was pretty flat. You saw from the middle of 2020, 17%, to Q2 of 2022, 17% or under in terms of cancellations. During the COVID-19 recession, we saw 43% cancellations, which is significantly lower than we saw last quarter. So shockingly, last quarter was just gigantic in these new home cancellations as consumers continue to be concerned about the health of the housing market this year. We talked about it earlier in the week. Consumer confidence is up slightly, but it's still down relative to a couple of years ago, as we've had 8 or 9 months of consistent confidence going down. We just saw that last month where the consumer confidence went up. This is a trend to watch closely in quarter one. What's going to happen with some of these new home cancellations? Where's the demand going to be on new housing, which is typically higher than median priced housing? I don't believe, we're going to talk about it this week on Knowledge Brokers podcast. We mentioned it last week. I don't believe median priced housing, is going to go down in price. But is some of this new construction going to be considered overpriced as we get into 2023? Okay, Housing Wire has a report out about mortgage interest. We talked about this yesterday on the hot sheet. Okay, if you missed the hot sheet yesterday, you can go back and get it. Just search under the live tab here on BAM YouTube. Now they're talking about the demand picking up, but as seller concessions rise. Okay, so we are seeing an increase in mortgage applications, but we're also seeing sellers concede more in the deal. Okay, 5 people contacted me last week or so. It's much better than a month or two ago, said a Washington-based loan officer. Okay, so he's talking about, he's getting people reaching out. They want to apply for a mortgage, and he's saying these numbers are much higher. Loan officers saw an increase in mortgage demand during the first week of 2023 as mortgage rates ticked down, and to close deals, seller increasingly coming to the table with these concessions and rate buy downs. Okay, that lender from DC or from Washington, I'm sorry, this is Vancouver, Washington, was from Movement Mortgage, saying, and you may be talking to a lender, you may be a lender yourself. If you're a lender, let us know in the comments, what are you seeing? According to MBA, Mortgage Brokers Association, mortgage applications rose 1.2% for the week ending January 6th compared to the week earlier, when the 30-year rates for conforming loans, 47,200 or less, went from 6.58% to 6.42%. Obviously, the 30-year conforming loans increase went up. Okay, so that might be helping more people get into the market. It might be helping more people say, you know what, I am going to apply for a loan right now. Now's the time for me to jump in there. I can borrow more money at 3.5% down, at 5% down, as you know, with this government-backed loan. So that increase could have also coincided with the drop in mortgage rates to help people get off the fence here after the holidays, get into January, and start buying more homes. Let's talk about these concessions, and I'd love to know in the comments, are you dealing with sellers that are more willing to do concessions? Are they not willing to, concede in the deal, to negotiate on any material facts or on price? What type of concessions are you seeing? Are you seeing them in the median price? A lot of agents I'm talking to, median price points in many areas are actually not giving concessions, are actually getting multiple offers again as we look at the first 2 weeks of January. Very interesting. Talked about it on the Real Word podcast just this past Tuesday. Okay, so Housing Wire rather says concessions, mortgage rate buy downs are saving these deals. They're keeping deals together. According to industry watchers, sellers are attracting buyers to the homes through mortgage rate buy downs. Okay, mortgage rate buy downs make a lot of sense to me. That's a concession that, hey, I've got a great strong buyer. We can close. I can get my money. Let's help them with this mortgage rate buy down. According to a new Redfin report, a record 41.9% of home sellers gave concessions to home buyers in quarter 4 of 2022. By the way, that makes sense. Quarter 4, 2022, where we saw transactions continue to decline in a lot of areas. We did see inventory tick up. Okay, still not a lot of inventory, but we saw inventory tick up in a lot of areas. Certainly Phoenix and Vegas felt it, where inventory went much higher than other parts of the country. Quarter 4 makes sense to me that 41.9% of home sellers gave concessions. They maybe wanted to get the deal done before the new year. Maybe they wanted to get it done before the holidays so they could just have it off their plate. Totally makes sense. I believe that number might be lower in quarter 1 as it seems like, with mortgage rates coming down, with mortgage purchase applications going up, okay, with low inventory in a lot of areas still. We may say an early spring market right now. We may see that. We may be seeing that. It's too early to tell. But I think this number that Redfin reported on for quarter 4 could go down as we get into quarter 1. The percentage represents the highest increase since July 2020 when Redfin started tracking this data. In the third quarter of 2022 and the fourth quarter of 2021, sellers gave concessions in just 30% of home sales. Okay, so there you go. There's the report from Redfin, as Housing Wire covered it beautifully. Concessions up in quarter 4, highest since 2020 in July. Remains to be seen what happens in quarter 1. Love your thoughts in the comments, what you're seeing on the ground floor, what you're seeing in your market as we move through these first 2 weeks of the year. Okay, last but not least, Inman. They released their first ever Power Player Awards. Okay, Swanepoel. We talked about this yesterday in the hot sheet. On Tuesday, released their Swanepoel Power 200. Similar names? I think so. Similar list? I think so very much, looking at the list. Okay, so this Swanepoel's was their 10th ever. This is Inman's first ever Power Player Awards. Okay, what does that mean? What is it? How does it look? Let's dive into it. Inman Power Players, curated by the Inman editorial team. So the editorial team picked these names. The Power Player Awards recognize the most innovative and influential executives in the real estate industry. Inman is known for blah, blah, blah. The result is the debut class of Inman Power Players. 121 professionals have been selected from across residential real estate universe and represent the pinnacle of industry success. Our 2023 Inman Power Players include executives and founders, as well as innovators and visionaries, each of whom is playing a key role in shaping our industry's future. Okay, couple things I absolutely hate about this list. The editors at Inman went and selected 121 professionals across residential real estate. They're saying, hey, these are the power players in our industry. These 121 men and women, they're the power players. But they didn't have the juice to list them in order. They didn't have the, shall I say, balls to list them in order 1 through 121. At least Swanepoel does that. Okay, this is all alphabetical order, so I guess everybody's the same. There's no, or maybe that's how they're going to differentiate from Swanepoel. I don't like that this is all just in alphabetical order. I want to know who's won, who's 121. I do want to know how you got there, not just that, a bunch of people, pick these on their own or whatever. Let's see. Am I on the list here, Inman? I don't see that. No, I guess not. Sorry. There's a Byron McDuffie, Elm Street Technology. Way to go, Byron McDuffie. Anyways, at least Swanepoel articulates a little bit deeper about how they're making this list, and they're ranking them 1 through 200. You can see exactly who's 1, who's 200. This is just I don't know, not a lot of effort on this list. Okay, so Ryan Serhant, I don't think he was on the Swanepoel list. He's on this one. Sean Black, he was on both. I mean, we could cross-reference, see who was on both. TF, shout out to TF. He's on the list. I don't know. Jim Weichert, of course, he's on both lists. And Glenn Kelman, he was 11, or he was number 12. Gino was number 1 on the Swanepoel list. He's in there. Gary Keller, obviously. So a lot of similar names. The Ravises, shout out to the Ravises. They're on both lists. Ben Kenny was on both lists. Dude's crushing it. And so anyways, I don't know, pretty generic list. Inman and everybody wants to control the lists of real estate. I've always had a lot of respect for the Swanepoel one. It was brought to my attention yesterday after covering it on the hot sheet that, wow, but they're just picking the names. And then there's other lists, obviously, we've gotten into. Troy wrote a great article on BAM about these lists where, agents and everybody's just paying to be on them. Inman, nobody paid Inman to be on this list. Nobody paid Swanepoel to be on that list. I think Swanepoel, in Inman's defense, Swanepoel doing it 10 years, maybe they've been able to articulate, obviously for a longer period of time and a little bit deeper about how they pick the list. But why not have a list where people are actually voting on who gets on this list, right? A vote throughout the industry that is fully transparent. I don't know. Maybe BAM should do that. Let me know in the comments if BAM should create a list that is fully transparent where everybody's voting, nobody's paying to get on it. Because it was brought to my attention that even Swanepoel, it's like, hey, well, is this a list for them to just pick up maybe new clients because they're just, picking the people that they want to consult with, they want to collaborate with, they want to do a deal with? Is Inman doing the same? It's certainly a piece of content for them. Not trying to say anything, that they did anything bad. I love covering it. I love looking at the list, by the way. I'm a fan of these lists, but there's a huge debate in the industry. What do these lists mean? Do they mean anything? Are they of any value? Anyways, the Inman Power Players list is up, very reminiscent of the Swanepoel list. We'll link that down below as we do with all the show notes so you can pull this stuff and look through it on your own. Let's take a quick look at what the 10-year is doing right now with the CPI data. I'm going to refresh. So we've got really up to the minute accurate data here as we jump in. 10-year is actually up a tick, surprisingly. Okay. It was down yesterday off of the news. If we look at the 5-day window here, you saw a decline right about there. Sharp decline as the CPI data was going to be positive. But now all of a sudden this morning, it's going back up. Very interesting. We'll see later today how the 30-year mortgage reacts to that. Yesterday's 30-year rate average was 6.15% on June 11th. That's down from the 6.21 on January 10th. Okay, so we've been sitting between the 6.2 and 6.14 for the last 4 reports on the 30-year mortgage. Been very consistent from Friday all the way through today. We'll see what happens later on today when the mortgage rate and as it reacts to that 10-year. We'll see what happens. All right, later today, 5 o'clock Eastern time on BAM YouTube, the walkthrough. We've got a Real Word and Overask collab. Eric and Matt Leonetti, myself and Nicole White on the walkthrough. Matt and Nicole, their first time on the walkthrough. Do we get into a little bit of a debate on which podcast is better? I don't know. Maybe we do. We talk about a whole bunch of stuff. Make sure you tune into that today at 5 o'clock. Consider subscribing to this YouTube channel if you're interested in all of the bite-sized 24-hour window look back on the housing industry and how it relates to every single real estate professional. That's the hot sheet. That's today's show. And we'll see you guys back here tomorrow, live at 9:30.